and ask the audience, are there any questions?
I just have one quick question to Professor Navrot. Are there any markers of air pollution which can be determined in blood? I mean, in the whole blood, in the plasma, or even serum?
So the marker that we use and that I showed in these studies is black carbon. That can be detected via confocal microscopy that visualize specifically the black carbon particles. So that can be used. The only limitation is that in large studies it's still very difficult because it's very labor intensive and expensive. So it's not, I would say you can do that in studies 300 participants, that is feasible, 300, 400 maybe, but not in very large studies. It's difficult till now. There are some other markers as well that are used. They use magnetic detection of particles in the body.
This question is for Dr. Bartels. If I understood your presentation well, your children and the elderly, they were followed for a couple of days at high and low levels of noise. Then my first question is, in such a study, how do you exclude regression to the mean? That's the first question. The second question is, you used ambulatory blood pressure monitors in the older people. Do you know whether the sleep disturbance was due to the noise or to the discomfort of the ambulatory monitor? And my third question is, did you look at the noise time, the noise multiplied by the time, the order interaction?
Okay, first question. We investigated participants from different areas with different exposure. That means differing not only on a annual mean, but also varying from night to night because of the operation direction. You have a variance in the flight tracks, and as a consequence also in the levels. So we were not comparing generally higher exposed individuals to generally lower exposed individuals, but we were comparing higher exposed nights to lower exposed nights. Second question was about the blood pressure measurement. You are absolutely right. I did not mention this in my talk. The investigation of aircraft noise impact on sleep quality was of course done without the blood pressure measurement. This was an extra night. We had for the older participants 5 nights only with polysomnography, and the 6th night was a separate night only with blood pressure measurement. We had also a sleep, we tracked also sleep for control reason, but this was the intention, our intention was of course to rule out negative effects of the arm cuff on the sleep quality. Yes, that's true. And I have to admit that I forgot the third question. No, there is no interaction, no sequence effect or something like this. And I should have mentioned that all our participants were residing at least 1 year in this area, so they were already used to aircraft noise, also used to aircraft noise during the night.
Can I have a question for Mrs. Hansel? Yeah, to you. Yeah, my question regards, in your slides, you put the, let's say, the link between noise and obesity, for example, or noise.
Yeah.
And my point is it this way it goes, or is it the other way it goes? Because honestly, we did studies in Geneva and in Lausanne, and if you look at the localizations of patients with the higher cardiovascular risk, the obese one, the smokers, the high cholesterol, the high blood pressure, these are mainly people who have low socioeconomic status and live in high risk, let's say high polluted thing, because the living is cheaper, because the apartments are cheaper, they are close to the highway, blah, blah, blah. And in the end, I'm not really I mean, perhaps the noise adds something on their situation, which is probably not good for their health. But basically, I mean, a lot of these people are not born there. I mean, they just moved there. And so I'm not really convinced that noise produces obesity. But obesity and low socioeconomic actually favor the development of this, or the location of these people in a high risk or high noise area, and can even aggravate their situation.
Thank you. It's a good question. So there is biological plausibility through the cortisol, increased cortisol from noise and increased stress, that you would have increased central fat deposition and obesity. And there is epidemiological evidence from a number of studies and systematic review about associations of noise and diabetes and BMI type associations. In our study, we did adjust for both individual level and area level deprivation. It's the first study, so if it's the first study, I'm always more cautious. I like to see studies in different populations with different assortments of the risk factors, so that we can say, do we think this is likely to be causal? But certainly, if I look across the body of evidence, is there some biological plausibility? Yes. Are there other epidemiological studies relating to this particular risk factor? Yes. And does that support the evidence we were looking at? We're trying to say, well, we've seen this association between aircraft noise and cardiovascular disease outcomes. If we look on the intermediate pathways, how does the evidence base look for that? So I'm not going to go all out and say yes, definitely it's there, but I'm going to say within the body of evidence it looks plausible, and I'd love to see some replication studies.
The relationship between socioeconomic status and noise you mentioned is true for road traffic noise. There you have those more exposed have a lower socioeconomic status. But it's not necessarily true for aircraft noise, because when you think about aircraft noise, you have to think about that about the exposure of communities where rich people and poor people are living. And you have the other way around in concerning aircraft noise, that those that have a higher income are more annoyed by aircraft noise because they fear loss of value of their houses. So it's, for aircraft noise, it's not the relationship you are thinking about.
I can come back on that because Heathrow has a nighttime curfew, 11:30 to 6. The noisiest time of day is actually between 6 and 7. And if you look at the sleep studies, I think it's between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. that most people have as their sleep period. So you are disturbing sleep, even if you have a night curfew. And you still have some flights coming in overnight. So it would be great if you had an airport that closed for several years and opened again. That might be a better experimental type design. I just comment really about the hypertension, and from engaging with policymakers on this, they don't know what to do with it because they say, oh, it's a risk factor. So if we include it in our burden of disease calculations and costings, then we're double counting because we also look at outcomes. And we've had that discussion in the UK with the Department of Environment and saying, well, actually, it may not be a disease, but it does, it creates a lot of burden on medical care because it needs to be treated and follow up. So therefore there are costings that are associated with that are not currently being captured. But that might be an alternative. It's not just the evidence base. I think people don't know quite where it sits in terms of burden of disease.
I would like to thank you, Anna, for your excellent lecture. I think one of the most important lectures during this conference, because you bring us very important information. This is a conference with a central point for hypertension. And looking on your results, I see that main mechanism leading to the increased mass of the left ventricle was not the pressure overload, so the hypertension, but rather volume. It is obesity. It's for me very important information, basic information for the understanding the mechanism, how that noise acts on cardiovascular system. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? Thank you. I have a question for Dr. Bartels. You know, you showed this beautiful data on sleep, and I know sometimes when you want to replicate findings from the epidemiological part in the sleep lab, it's very hard to find noise effects on sleep. And you even found some beneficial effects because you said there was more slow wave sleep or deep sleep in the older. But you didn't explain it. Do you have an explanation? Could it be that, with noise, you can also trigger slow waves as a treatment, but you have to do it in the upstate of the slow wave. So, or do you have another explanation why they slept better? Were there order effects, or I don't think so, right?
To be honest, I do not know. I'm only speculating. Maybe one reason is in the scoring of the sleep, based on Rechtschaffen in Kales or ASSM. Maybe some epochs have been scored as deep sleep because they have reached the minimum requirements. But still, deep sleep in older people are not that deep as in medium-aged or younger adults. This is why I said here in the next step we want to look at the frequencies, conducting spectral analysis to find out what was the energy in the slow waves, in the very low frequencies. To be honest, I don't have any other idea what could be the reason for this counterintuitive effect. I know there is some research going on in testing what is the effect of masking unwanted sounds, or using broadband noise, low frequency broadband noise to mask things. I don't think that this is the case here. I'm sorry, I don't have a clear answer to this question.
I have a question for Team Navrot. First, congratulations to the excellent data and lecture. You have shown in the prenatal or pregnancy exposure to black carbon that there might be the effect significantly the second trimester, I guess. So do you have some biological rationale for that? I would imagine it could be related to embryogenesis. Looking at Michelle and myself, we are kidney guys also, we could speculate it has some impact on, nephron number, etc. There are hypotheses around that could maybe related to these findings, also vascular aging at postnatal life and in aging.
So for the most endpoints that we study, we see that the second trimester is the most sensitive period. But it depends. For some methylation markers, it's very early in the pregnancy. For some outcomes, it's later. But I think, for instance, we had a study on cystatin C and air pollution, and that was especially around the second trimester.
Go ahead, please.
The effect of noise in industrial workers and in disco people. I believe that the threshold for the effect of noise on blood pressure was around 70 or 80 decibels, and I wonder if the uncertainty in some of the studies is because the threshold that was studied was around 50.
I don't know who is going to answer because it's an important question.
Yeah, it depends about what kind of sound level you are talking about. 78 dB in a disco sounds to me like there's some acute event-related noise level. You measure when you have the sound. The sound levels we are talking about when we talk about DALIs or epidemiological results are noise levels that summarize the noise events across the night, across the whole 24-hour days or so. So I'm not sure the 78 dB you mentioned, is it the what is it called, continuous average sound level, or is it the maximum sound level of the music, of the sound itself? Do you know?
You'd like to comment?
Yeah, just to comment that some of the studies we've found suggestions of a non-linear dose response, so we see a higher effect estimates at higher noise levels. But one of the problems is once you get down to this sort of 50 decibel level, you're looking at usually, road transport, you're looking at noise from a particular source rather than total environment noise, and it might get lost. So you've got some misclassification bias going on, and you've also got some misclassification because homes let in sound differently. So it does become more difficult at those lower levels when you're using modelled outside sound as a proxy for what the indoor exposure might be. So I think, yes, easier to see effects at higher noise levels because they come into the house. There's a whole literature on using the outdoor noise as indoor exposures and which facade you measure to, but
okay, I understand that we have the problem. Jan and Michel will finish. Okay, so Jan first, please. My question is also about aircraft noise, and it's based on my personal experience because I'm in long-haul flights many days a year. Is there any study, case control study, that showed that pilots and the cabin crew, who are and my main annoyance during the flight is the noise. Are there any case control studies where they looked at the risk of hypertension in pilots, cabin crew, and non-exposed age, sex, and risk factor matched population, showing that the risk of flying air personnel is higher than the comparison.
I'm not aware of the studies in aircraft personnel particularly, but quite interesting question.
The question is interesting, but I'm afraid it will be difficult to dissolve the problem, because all this crew is related also to other stress related to flights. So probably, and they spend, I think, 2 days flying, 2 days off. So it will be really difficult, because they stay in the hotels sometimes. So it's very difficult population to study. I don't know whether any of you would like to comment.
I cannot recall a study that looks on the long-term effects of this exposure for pilots, but I remember a study of a colleague of mine who investigated the short-term effects, that is, how is sleep quality in a mock-up of a crew rest compartment under the specific hypobaric conditions and noise. And yes, sleep is of course deteriorated, but I cannot remember a long-term perspective paper.
Anyway, we have to add jet lag into a confounding factor. Michel, please.
No, I had just a last comment or questions for you in the elderly and the sleep, because you always said these are normal hearing. By my experience in the older patient, maybe not the one you said above 55, but about 70, a lot of people actually underrate their hearing loss. And they say, well, no, I hear perfectly. But, you know, I tested within the family come after, you know, a COVID or after some viral thing. And some people can lose 20, 30% of their hearing. They don't feel anything, but they still have these things. So for some level or some frequency of sound, they don't hear really very well.
We kept this in mind, and this is why we used pure tone audiometry to check the hearing ability. But nevertheless, may I just add a comment? You are right in this point that hearing loss comes with age. So when I refer to normal hearing according to age, this still means that the hearing threshold is higher than those of younger adults. But still, this is declared as normal hearing according to age.
Okay, anyway, I understand the problem of noise reminds me about the old paper of Franz Messerli about the consumption of chocolate and Nobel Prize awards. So maybe we need some more data probably. But anyway, I would like to thank all the speakers for great lectures, for very interesting discussion. I understand that the problem is not being solved so far, so it will be the topic for the next session next year. Marek will organize, I'm sure. And I will pass the micro to our chairman, because he will, I understand, will pass some organization.
Thank you.